Hi, Sylvia.
Yes,
Sylvia, go ahead.
I was at the deli on Fulton Street, and I heard a loud rumbling, and when I walked out of the deli onto Fulton Street, I looked up in the air, and there was an airplane actually going into the World Trade Center, and flames were coming out, and smoke was just billowing in the air, and tons of people were running down Fulton Street, just running each other over, and I made my way back to my office on Water Street, and when I got upstairs, I looked out my window to see what was going on, and the Second World Trade Center just went into flames, just from 1 minute to the next.
Sylvia, thanks for that eyewitness report. And once again, David Lee Miller is on the phone with us. David?
I'm sorry, John, I didn't hear you.
Well, I wanted to thank you for that report and for that eyewitness account of what happened.
John, I think it's important to keep in mind this morning that just getting information out is a difficult thing at this time, because there are people running through the streets with their cell phones in hand, many like myself, who are unable to actually get through on the cell system. It is overloaded, and the only way for most people to communicate right now is to find a regular telephone line, because they're just literally thousands of people streaming through the streets, all of them not knowing what to do or what has happened here.
Right. All right, David Lee Miller, thanks very much. Want to bring into the discussion William Daley. He is a former FBI agent. Bill, there are reports that the FBI is looking into the possibility of a plane hijacking. When you look at these buildings are the symbols of capitalism to enemies of America, aren't they?
Absolutely, John. I mean, these have, as we know, were the target of the terrorist attack in this last decade. And by comparison, that explosion, as horrific as it was, certainly pales in respect to what we see happening here today. Just the thought that, when I first heard the reports, by the way, and I heard that a plane had hit the top of the World Trade Center, I thought perhaps it was something that was gone awry, a small plane lost control. Certainly the worst fears of anyone in law enforcement and security is someone directly going after a building, particularly the World Trade Center. Then just a few minutes later, another plane intentionally flying into the World Trade Center just dramatizes the fact that we have a serious, I believe, a terrorist incident here. And I believe that something has happened that has caused these planes to be taken or be commandeered.
We all shared in that hope, Bill, in the early going. In fact, one of our early guests from the former National Transportation Safety Board investigator was saying, hey, this could have been a pilot who was temporarily disoriented, maybe blinded by the morning sun. It has happened before. A skyscraper, the Empire State Building, was hit back in 1945 by an Army bomber. But that was in the fog. This was on a bright, clear morning, and when we saw that second plane slam into the second tower intentionally, quite clearly, you got to believe this is a terrorist attack. It doesn't seem like there would be two suicidal pilots out there who just wanted to, you know, fly their planes into these buildings for whatever reason. A suicidal person might want to do that.
John,
Harvey Kushner is on the line with us. He's a frequent guest of ours and a terrorism expert. Harvey, is it too early to speculate about suspects? I don't want to bring up memories of the Oklahoma City bombing when people were talking about Middle Eastern terrorists.
Yeah, obviously it's too early to bring that up. Who might be responsible if, in fact, it is terrorism? I mean, you know, look, John, I couldn't conjure up a story like this. I couldn't. If I wrote a script like this with two planes, I believe there were two, will go into the Trade Center on a clear day like this, you know, somebody laugh at me and say this is beyond bizarre. So one thinks only that this could be the most horrifically planned incident, you know, in the annals of terrorism against the United States. Think about it. I mean, you look outside the Fox studios, look how clear it is. I mean, how could you miss the trade towers? I
Right.
mean, not just one, but two planes?
Well, and it brings to mind, you know, everybody hates those metal detectors at airports, and everybody makes passing through them almost a joke these days. But clearly, it seems that something is going to change. I guess there are many questions left to be answered about these two planes. It is certainly possible that some terrorist group somewhere bought a couple of small, relatively for them inexpensive jet transport planes for a few $1 million a piece if you can make this kind of a statement and kill as many people as are likely to be dead in this kind of scenario.
Yeah, you know, John, you know, we're talking about terrorism. No matter how this turns out, this is going to be a day that's going to live in infamy. And, you know, it's going to cause changes in terms of, if it turns out that terrorism in terms of security like this country has never seen before. And if it just happens to be an accident, it's going to change FAA and NTSB and the whole airline industry and flight patterns over New York, especially if it's a small craft involved or if it's a 737.
Well, I think it's way beyond calling this an accident at this point, Harvey. But
well, I'm trying to be incendiary. You know,
right?
I recall, I'm old enough, unfortunately, to recall incidents in which people from Middle Eastern descent were blamed for the Oklahoma City right up front. You remember that?
Right, I do,
and certainly,
and we
you know,
want
the
to stay away from that.
Which occurred with TWA 800 as well.
Right.
But to me, as I said to you, I couldn't conjure up a story like this, John, and I'm sure you've covered news throughout the world. This is something is just...
This is absolutely
it's literally
horrific.
Put goosebumps. For a terrorism guy like myself, it's put goosebumps on my body.
We're all in that same situation. Harvey, thanks very much. Harvey Kushner is a terrorism expert. We want to go to Dr. Peter Salgo. Peter Salgo, he is not only an eyewitness, but he's now at Presbyterian Hospital working triage. Dr. Salgo, in human terms, what are we looking at here? How many injuries have you seen?
We haven't seen anybody yet. This is all so new that we're all trying to figure out exactly what the response needs to be here. I know that there are meetings going on now to find out whether we should go ahead with the operating room schedule or not, what we're going to need to do if there are casualties that get up to Presbyterian Hospital with regard to the ICUs, with regard to the recovery room status. Every hospital in this city has a disaster plan. And with communications a bit disrupted, the question is really who needs to initiate the disaster plan? Where are the victims going to be transported? We're pretty far away from the World Trade Center. We're up at the George Washington Bridge, which is several miles north.
Dr. Salgo, let me interrupt you for just a moment. President Bush is about to speak. He's in Florida at what was supposed to be a joyous event at an elementary school. Let's listen in.
A difficult moment for America. Unfortunately, we'll be going back to Washington after my remarks. Secretary of Rod Pace and Lieutenant Governor will take the podium and discuss education. I do want to thank the folks here at Booker Elementary School for their hospitality. Today, we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country. I have spoken to the Vice President, to the Governor of New York, to the Director of the FBI, and have ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act. Terrorism against our nation will not stand. And now, if you join me in a moment of silence. May God bless the victims, their families, and America. Thank you very much.
Clearly a shaken President Bush, jettisoning what were intended to be his remarks on education. Perhaps a little more education worldwide would prevent this kind of thing in the future, but we are going to be looking at an enormous death toll. 50,000 people work in those 2 buildings. They have been slammed into by airplanes. You're looking at the footage of one of the planes coming in earlier. This is the second plane, a jet aircraft hitting the World Trade Center about 2 minutes after 9. Perhaps 5 minutes after 9 this morning. Rita Cosby is on the phone with us, and Rita, I understand you have a lot of new information.
Yeah, John, I have just been told from a U.S. law enforcement official that they are saying it is evident that this is a terrorist-related attack, and among the key targets, key people that they're looking at is Osama bin Laden. It was just last Friday that the U.S. State Department put out a worldwide caution to American citizens traveling abroad and also to U.S. government facilities, and they said that terrorism knows no limits, whether it's on U.S. soil or outside. So they're certainly looking at that as a possibility. What I'm also hearing from my officials at FAA, at the Federal Aviation Administration, is that they believe the first plane may have been an American Airlines plane, a commercial jet, either a 737 or 757, and that it was a hijacked plane. This is what they believe. They're still trying to get this verified, but they did get some reports that there was an American Airlines plane that was hijacked en route from Boston to Los Angeles this morning. And they're saying that there is a strong possibility that that first plane that crashed into one of the towers, which does appear to be commercial, and looking at the video, they're saying appears to be either a 737 or 757, that apparently might have been the hijacked plane. In terms of what the second plane is, they said that does appear, as you've been reporting, John, to be a jet plane, probably a 737, twin-engine jet airplane. And those are the two things that are being looked at. They said at this point there was no direct threat that they were aware of as any specific threat in terms of targeting the Twin Towers there in New York, but that they did have specific threats against Americans and American facilities around the world, and that's why they issued that worldwide caution. We also know that the FBI Rapid Response Team has been deployed. It is en route. Several FBI agents are already on the scene there at the Twin Towers, but they are definitely looking at this as a terrorist-related act, looking at this point not knowing who is behind it, but looking at the strong possibility that it may be Osama bin Laden, the mastermind behind the East African embassy bombings several years ago. Back to you, John.
All right, Rita Cosby, thanks very much. I want to bring into the conversation William Daly. Bill, I know that Osama bin Laden likes airplanes, and again, we are not attributing this act to his organization, but he was implicated in a plot to blow up something like 13 airliners in 13 days, or 8 in 8 days, that back in the Philippines, back in the 1980s, I believe.
Exactly.
Airplanes have been his terrorist weapon of choice in the past.
They have, because they hold for someone like a bin Laden or other terrorists, the fact that you could take a plane and within just the number of people on the plane commit such a horrendous act at one time makes an impact to the world. Combine that with what we see in front of our eyes today at the World Trade Center, and you certainly conjure up the worst possible scenario that certainly law enforcement could think of what a terrorist might do. Before we get on to, possibly bin Laden, there are certainly other terrorist groups around the world that would like to do things like this. The question would be who might be able to actually carry out such an incident, whether by sheer manpower, training, or some other device. So although he's certainly our poster boy literally for terrorism worldwide, there are other groups out there that certainly have also ill intent against the United States. But what we see before us today is, as I mentioned before, is something that in planning scenarios gets almost into the catastrophic, where it's to prevent something like this from happening. Planes fly by, John, as you may know, and I know, having traveled in and out of the city, come up and down the East River by the hundreds each day, by the thousands each week, and passing by the Trade Center.
At rooftop level.
You look down and you see the antenna, you see the windows. So this is something that even on a bad day, they fly up and down that route. Today was a perfectly clear day in New York.
Even if some air traffic controllers saw those airplanes, and certainly they would have been in view of air traffic control, it might not have looked all that unusual.
The first plane, which from my appearance, I saw it over Fifth Avenue heading south when I was coming to work, appeared to be a 737, or as I said, a smaller Airbus that could fit with what Rita just reported, that her sources are saying that perhaps it was a plane hijacked from Boston, which obviously is north, that is a used air route down through Manhattan before planes make a left into LaGuardia. So clearly, perhaps there may not have been an indication that something was wrong at that time.
I just want to remind our viewers that the NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange have not opened for the day for obvious reasons. This catastrophic terrorist attack on the World Trade Center right there in the Wall Street area. The two markets have not opened for the day. No word yet on when they will open, but clearly, given this kind of turmoil, you don't want to throw the financial markets into a complete panic. John Fund from the Wall Street Journal is on the phone with us. John, were you in the area when the planes hit?
I was across the street in my office building.
What did you see? What did you hear?
I heard an incredible sonic boom, and looked up, and there were already much smoke and flames pouring out of the building. And about 15 minutes later, of course, a second sonic boom, which of course would have been the second tower and the second plane.
What about injury?